Pacers win in Detroit. They beat the Pistons, their fifth straight road win. Myles Turner, tremendous on offense. Andrew Nembhard, tremendous on defense. Game got close, but the Pacers found a way. And Aaron Nesmith is back. We have a lot to discuss on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Friday. Congrats, you made it through the week, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today I am still in Little Caesars Arena, so you're going to get some echoey audio because we have a lot to talk about. Fun game just happened right on the score behind me between the Pacers and Pistons. 111-100, the final score. Pacers defended quite well, but they needed enough offense to get it done, and they only had it in the first half. Myles Turner was awesome. Their offense looked great for that first, let's say, 30 minutes of this game. Tyrese Haliburton was back in the lineup. Aaron Nesmith returned his first game in 35 games. Pascal Siakam was great in the first half. So much to get to from a big Pacers win. I didn't talk about this before the game because we did trade deadline stuff yesterday, but these two teams close in the standings. The play-in battle between them could actually matter as the Pistons are ascending and quite good this season. 1-1 in the season series entering this game. To get two road wins in Detroit this year could prove to be very important for the Pacers. We have to start with what I think is the story of the game because of what it was in terms of actually what happened and because of what it led to for the rest of the Pacers. That's Myles Turner, who was awesome shooting the ball. Actually, a little bit upset when we talked to him post-game that he didn't set his career high in threes. He only tied it 8 triples for Myles Turner in this game. The Pacers made 13 as a team. Myles Turner and Aaron Nesmith were 10 for 14 from three. The rest of the Pacers were 3 for 16. So those two were crucial. But of course, Myles Turner, when you hit 8 and the rest of your team only hits 5, you're huge. The Pistons made 9 as a team in this game, right? One more miss from any Piston, and Myles Turner would have matched them in threes by himself. Full stop. That's impressive, right? It's hard to ask about that after the game. How important is it that this player made shots? That's the point of the sport. And Myles Turner did a wonderful job of it in this game, right? And they were all good looks. He took 11, and I'd say only 2 of them were, I'll say 3. 2 heat checks, which he earned, and 1 really tough fading late clock one in the first quarter. But he actually made that late clock toughie. And that was kind of my moment where I was like, oh, this could be a thing where Myles gets something going. And the way that this battle works between him and Jalen Duren has been very similar for the last couple seasons, right? For all the things Myles did great in this game, you know, we know what Duren's going to do against Myles Turner. He's going to smash the glass, and he did. Duren had 17 boards, 6 offensive rebounds. He's going to score inside. Duren didn't miss. He was 8 for 8. Jalen Duren was still minus 16 because he can't defend against Turner. And Turner, while he, you know, the specific battle right there wasn't good. Turner did good team defense. He had 3 blocks and 2 steals, and he was plus 16, right? He dominated that battle despite Duren having some nice offensive nights. And it starts with that offensive end. So obviously, again, full stop, making 8 threes is huge. And Turner's pick and pop feel was really good in this game. Duren really wants to drop back. His defense is kind of shaky, and Turner took advantage of that. The Pistons really wanted to stop the drives from Haliburton or Nembhard or McConnell. You know, usually the guy setting up Turner in this game was Tyrese Haliburton, who had 8 assists, 6 for Andrew Nembhard. And they were really determined to not let those guys get to the rim. And a lot of the Pacers offense is that. Their point guards driving, their best players getting to the basket. And the JB Bickerstaff, good defensive coach, he didn't want that to happen. He cut him off pretty well. So he said, okay, the pop's open right there. Let's just pass it to that guy. And Turner hit his first one. I think it was the first Pacers points of the game, or maybe the second Pacers points of the game. And then he had another one, and then he hit that tough fading one. And then it just kept going and going where he could pop open and get open and hit it. And it felt like any 3 he got was a good shot. So here's how that changed everything for the Pacers. Obviously, it's good to hit 8 threes, but you saw this in the second half of the game. There were 2 consecutive shots for the Pacers. One that ended with a layup where wide open Siakam corner 3 was the first one. He actually missed that wide open corner 3. And then a bucket a couple possessions later from, I forget who, on a layup driving from the right side, where the defense was just terrified of Myles Turner shooting a 3. Rush out to defend him or defend the ball handler to make sure that was cut off, and the Pacers would score something else, right? That got Andrew Nembhard a bucket at the rim. That got, like I said, that Siakam corner 3. I can't find the second shot for some reason, but it became very clear quickly in the third quarter that the Pistons now were changing what they were doing defensively from guarding pick and pops or pick and rolls the way they were to, okay, we have to be a little more attentive to Myles Turner at the expense of other guys. Now, to the Pistons' credit, they defended much better in the second half. That strategy proved fruitful, although Turner still got free for, I think, 2 or 3 threes in the second half. But most of the Pacers' successful attempts they got in the third quarter were because of Turner, because of the gravity he provided in those moments. Did a good job picking on that to keep things flowing and get the shots they wanted. It was a Siakam corner 3 followed by a Haliburton basket from Siakam that I am talking about, by the way. If you want to go back and find or a layup too. If you want to go back and find the clips, it's with about 7 or 6 minutes to go in that third quarter, and that just kept going. The Pacers offense totally stalled. They had a terrible 9 minutes right after that, but Turner was not on the floor for some of that. Thomas Bryant came in. They tried some small groups. They tried a huge group with Toppin, Siakam, and Turner at one point. That's how good Turner was playing. It changed their whole rotation, as did Nesmith's return and Mathurin suspension. But I think the biggest way that this game went the Pacers' way, and the reason they were able to change their strategy and still get good shots in the second half, was all because of how hot Myles Turner was from deep. 28 points on 16 shots for Myles Turner. 1 for 5 on twos. He would like to have those back, certainly. Only 3 free throws, only 3 rebounds, but 5 stocks and 28 points on that many threes, plus 16, a team high. They rode him 37 minutes for Turner. That's more than they usually play him. He came in earlier in the fourth quarter than normal. Defense was good, particularly his team defense was good in this game, and his shot changed everything for the Pacers offensive. I thought that was the story for the Pacers offensively of the game. If you want to go to the other end of the floor, I think the story of the game for the Pacers was Andrew Nembhard. Hoo-hoo-wee. Was he good defending Cade Cunningham in this game? I couldn't tell what was going on with the Pacers rotation at first because they closed the first quarter with Nembhard, McConnell together, and that's unusual. It's usually Haliburton, McConnell together. And then I realized that early in the second quarter when Nembhard came back in, the second Cade Cunningham came back in. Oh, they're matching those guys' minutes. In fact, Nembhard played more than Cade and matched all 39 minutes and 10 seconds of Cade Cunningham's minutes in this game. Cade Cunningham, a monster player. He's going to be an all-star for the first time this season. The biggest part of many of the Pistons turnaround has him being awesome this year. 7 for 21. Tough night, 33.3% from the field, including 1 of 7 from deep. Some of those were fine looks that he just missed, and we've seen him capable of making them. He just did a great job drilling them, even against the Knicks in a very recent, high-profile Pistons win, but really struggled inside the arc, right? You can do the math. That's still 6 for 14 on twos. That's below 50%, which is kind of the watermark for an okay night inside the arc. And holding Cade has been really tough recently. I mean, he just had 36 in the Garden, 22 and 17 the game before that, 32 the game before that. He's just been a monster, right? He only had 13 the game before that because he only played 23 minutes because they beat the Nets by so much. Then 32 before that, 40 before that. He's been crushing, and Andrew Nembhard did a really good job defending him. In fact, Cade Cunningham at 33%, that's his second worst shooting percentage in a game this whole season. He had a 28.6% night against Toronto, and every other game has been better than the night he had today scoring the ball. And a lot of that was Andrew Nembhard's defense, and that's why they matched him to his minutes. I mean, they have Nesmith back. We'll get to that later, but Nesmith barely played in this game despite starting, which makes sense given, how they work players back from injury. We'll talk about that. But the way Nembhard defended Cade did everything to slow down the Pistons, and that's not even where this ends. Cade did have 9 assists. That was probably his biggest impact in this game, but he had 7 turnovers, and that's probably been the biggest stain on his supreme season is the turnovers. He's had pretty high turnover games a lot this year. 7 is tied for his 3rd most turnovers this season. They're dimming the lights in here, so you get a very darkened Little Caesars behind me. I don't even think you guys can tell. But either way, to have his 3rd most turnovers in a game this year and his 2nd worst shooting night says a lot about the pressure that the Pacers were putting on him, primarily with Andrew Nembhard, but you could see it when he'd come around a screen and try to look towards the basket and see where he could attack. Not only was Nembhard fighting through that screen to get in his face, the big or whoever was defending the screener would show. So Cade had to pause for just a second and get back. Nembhard recovers. They did a really good job staying connected specifically on him. Some other ball handlers got free. Marcus Sasser was wide open a few times. I don't think the Pacers are too worried about that. Ausar Thompson had some very impressive drives, I thought, in the first half of this game, but outside of a Tim Hardaway flurry early, like none of the other shooters or ball handlers for Detroit felt that dominant with the ball in their hands, and that's a ton of credit to the Pacers scheme they had against them, and that's a ton of credit to Andrew Nembhard, who, I mean, he's making a case for all defense, like a very strong case for all defense Unfortunately for him, I think the way the league goes, it's positionless now. Like bigs have become a little bit more valuable on the defensive end, but among the guards in the NBA this season, it's hard not to argue he's been one of the best 5 guard defenders in the league. And the night he just had against Cade, one of his best of the season, especially shutting down one individual like that. I mean, not that Cade is everything to the Pistons, but you watch the game, you saw their other creators. And with Jaden Ivey out, Tobias Harris can kind of do stuff with the ball, but he's not a ball stopper. That's a little harsh, but it does stick with him a little more. He has to turn and face a little bit. It's not the same. And they don't have the other creators who can shoot like Cade. So, once Tim Hardaway cooled off, I think he had 3 threes in the first couple minutes. Pistons couldn't get anything going with their perimeter guys, and Andrew Nembhard shutting off the water of the best creator for the Pistons was a big part of that. So on one end of the floor, the Pacers were carried by Myles Turner, who hit his own shots and opened up stuff for everybody else. On the other end, it was Andrew Nembhard doing a great job on the defensive end, shutting down Cade Cunningham. That's how the Pacers got this one done. Lots more stories I want to get to from this one. Siakam's terrific, especially first half. Another thing there. Nesmith returns. Tyrese Haliburton returns. We'll get to those two things next year on Locked On Pacers. But before we get to any of that, though, we need to talk about Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. It's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here. With Robinhood Gold, to receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for 1 year from the first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account investment rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC is a SIPC member. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make Locked On Pistons your second listen with Kuka Hill. I would say that he would be right to say just a bad night for the Pistons. The Pacers deserve credit for making it a bad night for the Pistons in many ways, but they played better than this even recently. Cade has made more shots than this. They found better defensive solutions than they did tonight. Kuka Hill will be all over it. They did find some defensive solutions in the second half. JB Bickerstaff's good at that mid-game adjustment. Kuka Hill will have more. I'm mad. Ku and I missed each other at both games this year. Still have not met him in person. Let's go to the injury front, where the small news was that Tyrese Haliburton was back. We'll get to that in just a second. But the big news, Aaron Nesmith returns to the lineup. I knew he'd been out for a while, right? 2.5 months. He played November 1st and hadn't played until January 16th. That is a long time. Like, I understand that. But for some reason, it hit me harder when someone said 35 games missed. It's almost half a season. And I knew that, but I didn't know that, if that makes any sense. That's a long time, right? It's the halfway point of the Pacers season entering today. And he'd only played in, 6 games to that point. They'd been without him for a long time, and they'd adapted to life without him. Certainly their starting 5 with Mathurin, and they'd been kicking tail. They figured some stuff out. Their bench rotation worked. And he comes back in a game where we're still left with a question about what the rotation is going to be going forward, because Ben Mathurin was suspended for this game. He did not play, which was a bummer. He was great in this building on opening night. The Pacers do not win that game without him, but they needed Nesmith back. He started, and I'm not sure if he would have had Mathurin been healthy. We will see potentially on Saturday when the Pacers host the Pistons in their final game before going to Paris, how they're going to manage that. Rick Carlisle did say after this game that Nesmith made it out okay. We talked to Nesmith. He said the same thing. He felt well-conditioned for his short little stints, 4.5-ish minutes each, as he only played 9.5 minutes. I don't know what his minutes limit was. It would appear it was 10. Regardless of all that extra background detail, we'll learn more about his true specific rotation spot as he can play more minutes and as the Pacers progress. But he did start today. So the lineup that the Pacers used in the playoffs for all of last season during their success played in this game and was good. And that is a big thing we'll get to in a second. It's just the specific lineup numbers. Nesmith played great. And it's easy to say that when he made his shots. But, I mean, I only fair to me to say that if a guy returns from a 35-game absence and went 1 for 4, everybody like, whatever. That makes sense. You haven't played. You haven't touched the leather in a game in how long? And then he comes in, makes 2 threes. Nice layup at the basket. He played a really solid offensive game. With the starting unit specifically, he was very tethered to the corner. He wasn't moving much on the offensive end with the Haliburton, Nembhard, Siakam, and Turner out there. With the way Turner was shooting, Nesmith was clearly the 5th option with that group, which is even the case when he's healthy and more mobile. But He did not move very much with those lineups, which is fine. He can provide spacing, especially if he makes 2 threes with those groups. But he played in the second quarter with a unit that actually had some reserves in it, right? He was in more of a benchy lineup, and that might be worth investigating what that group was and how specifically he can boost it. I'll search for his lineups for this game as I'm talking. I should have done that beforehand. But regardless, that group, he was more mobile. He was coming out of the corners for handoffs and dribbling it a little bit more. So the starters in this game with Nesmith in there played 5 minutes and 35 seconds to open the game. They were +1. It was 15-14 when that group changed. And Jarris Walker actually was the de facto fifth starter. He started the second half in Nesmith's place. And then to open the second quarter, the lineup was McConnell, Shepherd, Nesmith, Siakam, Bryant. That seems like it could be the bench on a standard night if Walker, say the guy who loses minutes on Shepherd's return, to late in the first quarter, early in the second quarter. That group played 3 minutes and 14 seconds and was +1. And then that bench group morphed to have Myles Turner come in for Thomas Bryant. That group only played 29 seconds before Nesmith's first half and night ended. That group was a +2. So that's how you get to +4 for Aaron Nesmith in the game that he had. But we saw him in 2 different units, and they both went pretty well. And that speaks to what he is, right? That is something that was a takeaway for me listening to people talk about him. Obviously, 3-and-D players are extremely valuable, and I think we all know this, but it's obviously better to hear it from players and see it in action. It's pretty easy to integrate someone like Aaron Nesmith, someone who can make threes and someone who can guard, can play with any other 4 players pretty much and provide at least some level of value, especially someone like Aaron Nesmith who plays really hard and other players follow suit, right? That was a big story for the Pacers at times last season. So it was pretty seamless the way he fit in, both because he played with the lineup and started with the lineup that he's played with so often, and then also because he's very malleable in terms of who he can have around him and still have pretty good success. And that, I think, is spoken to by every lineup he was a part of, winning their minutes with him out there. The other thing he did fine in this game, he started on Tobias Harris, and I thought defended Tobias Harris pretty well in this game. I don't think Tobias Harris hit a shot until Nesmith's game was over. I will refresh and check his first half stats out, but he definitely didn't score or hit a shot in the first quarter, and Nesmith, was on him, and he was certainly defending more players than just Tobias Harris, but I thought did a good job in that matchup. First quarter, Tobias Harris, when he was certainly being guarded by Aaron Nesmith, he missed every shot while defended by Nesmith. He did get going late in the quarter. He hit 3 shots late, but that was after some subs came in, so Nesmith deserves credit for that. That's like the third thing in my notes. I can't even find it now. There it is. Nesmith on Tobias doing nothing, and then Nesmith has 5 of the Pacers' first 12 points. Back-to-back notes there from Aaron Nesmith. So great start from him. They needed him to be good early because Tim Hardaway Jr. was the best player on the planet for the first 4 minutes of this game, but Nesmith and Turner got a minute. Nesmith's defense was good. There's not a ton you can say about a 9-minute sample, but I think I've hit all the high notes that the lineups he was in did well. He's very malleable. He shot it well. He defended well. That's what they need him to do. We'll see what the role shakes out to be when their team is possibly whole, minus their Achilles tear guys, on Saturday for the first time literally of the season. They lost James Wiseman opening night and lost Isaiah Jackson in New Orleans as well. So really one of the first times they'll have like as much of their healthy team as they've had really all year, right? Really since their second through 6th game when Isaiah Jackson was healthy again, because he missed opening night in this building. So that was good. The other thing that happened here, Tyrese Haliburton returned. He only missed 1 game. Groin injury makes that more palatable to me. If it was a hamstring injury, I would have been shocked by a 1-game absence for Tyrese Haliburton, even though Fred VanVleet, like I mentioned on my, reviewing of what's going on with Haliburton pod, I talked about how Fred VanVleet missed 1 game with a sore hamstring. He has a different history with that muscle. Either way, it's a groin thing for Haliburton, so it makes it more palatable for him to return fairly quickly. I will say this, of the starters, he played the fewest minutes, besides Nesmith, obviously. He played 34. They rode Nembhard a lot, and then McConnell swooped in there as well. So I think the fact that Nembhard was tied to Cade made it easier to keep Haliburton's minutes down as the lowest of the starters. But he looked fine to me. He had the little wrap thing below his left knee. Don't know if that's related to this injury or not, but 7 for 15 for Haliburton was much better inside the arc, 5 for 9 on 2s, 8 assists, no turnovers, right? That's the kind of offensive night they needed from him today, with the way that Turner was shooting and Siakam was cooking in the first half, and everybody sucked at scoring in the second half of this game. They just needed him to be kind of steadier, and he was with a 17-8 night. Like maybe like 90% speed instead of 100, but mostly unnoticeable injury issues for Haliburton, who also said he came out of this game feeling good. So I would expect that he's able to go Saturday, and then they'll have 5 days off before they play again next Thursday. So that's a very big benefit of their schedule too, is that they can be a little more aggressive especially because it is a groin thing for Haliburton here. There's not as much to analyze with him because he only missed one game, not 35 in a row. But yeah, slid right in, didn't look off, played fine, was their third best player to me, maybe fourth, but was very much Tyrese Haliburton impactful. They needed him to be good, and he was. He needed to get going in the fourth quarter last time we were here during Steph Curry Napgate with Haliburton. Today, he was consistently good for the full game. So the takeaway there, if the Pacers have their players, they might be able to build on what they've been doing. That's the thing about Nesmith. He's just additive, right? It's very hard to, like, unless he has a night where he's a little too antsy with his off the dribble game. He's very rarely a totally subtractive player unless he's just missing, which is the reality for every player of all time. If they're missing lots of shots, of course, they're not helping. But the way Nesmith plays and the thing he provides, he's just an additive kind of player. So having someone like him back, especially with the way the Pacers are playing, could be a nice boost. We'll see how it impacts their rotation and how things change. But a certainly strong early indicator of things to come that he fit right in and did well in his minutes. He'll have potentially a tough task with Tyrese Maxey or Paul George as his assignment Saturday, although you really never know who's going to play for the 76ers. Let's wrap this up by talking about some other stuff that stood out to me in this game, both good and bad. The bench, Pascal Siakam, great, much more to get to close out today. He's a Locked On Pacers. Before we do that, though, we need to talk about two awesome groups of people. First up, the good folks over at Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was certainly intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear fit or comfort or just finding the right style. Skims changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. Their stretch 5-inch boxer brief, that's what I have. I have 4 pairs of them now. It hooked me. They're fantastic. They're really great for working out or just moving around a lot. We just went to New York City last weekend on a trip, walked around all the time in the city. Felt great. The missing link of my outfit there. If you're just running errands, anything you're moving around on, they're comfortable and reliable, and the lightweight material feels awesome. So shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA or in Skims stores. Let them know we sent you after you place your order. Select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. That's skims.com/LockedOnNBA. We also need to talk about FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. Maybe you're into the Lions. The fans here were chanting Jared Goff's name during this game. And if you win your first bet on FanDuel, that's what you can get, $300 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Locked On NBA could be your second listen. I was on Wednesday's episode with Wes Goldberg talking Pacers, Cavs, and many other great games from that night. Also, check out Locked On Thunder and Locked On Cavs because I only looked at the score after the third quarter, but the Thunder kicked the Cavs behinds last night. Whew. What happened there? I need to watch that one, but I'm sure those shows will be interesting. I think it's the first time the Cavs have been truly blown out all season. Let's wrap up this Locked On Pacers from Detroit. I thought a very important thing that happened in this game was Pascal Siakam's first half, right? In this game, the second half of this game was ugly. 44 points for the Pistons, 42 for the Pacers, just ugly scoring. But the first half was decidedly not that. The Pistons scored 56 in the first half, and the Pacers scored 69 behind a 20-point quarter in the second quarter. But most quarters of this game were mid to low 20s in points for both teams. The defensive battle, a little slower pace, but that second quarter popped. And that's why I think Pascal Siakam deserves a ton of praise for what he did in this game, because it was hard to come by scoring in this game. Now, Nesmith's hot night notwithstanding, I already talked about Myles Turner. Every other player in the Pacers in the first half kind of was struggling. Nembhard 1 for 2, Haliburton 3 for 8, Toppin missed his shot, Bryant missed all 3 of his shots, TJ McConnell was 1 for 5. But Pascal Siakam broke through that, right? The Pistons had a similar issue. The only player who shot over 50% for them in the first half was Tim Hardaway Jr., and he did it all right at the beginning. Everybody else was 50% or lower. It was just tough sledding, except for Pascal Siakam, who was 7 for 10 in the first half. Just poor Ron Holland. I mean, he was trying so hard. I thought he was defending pretty well with effort, moving well, and Siakam would just turn around and flicking it over him or, under to the rim and draw a foul. Just a lot of veteran moves. with both players working hard, the vet with experience is going to win that. And he did. And he made 7 shots, and he got fouled a couple times, and he made all 4 of his free throws. 18 first half points for Siakam. That would have led all scores if Myles Turner wasn't going bananas with 5 threes in the first half. That was huge, I thought, for the Pacers in this game where, like I said, it was hard to come by points. He was rolling. He also had 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals in the first half. Those are good, full game nights for other players. Now, credit to the Pacers. They got Siakam 10 shots in the second half. I just talked about that last podcast, about how that dip has happened for them so much. He only made 3 of them. He was definitely off that half, but he still had 4 boards and 3 assists there. No turnovers. He wasn't as good, obviously, but was still helpful. But that speaks to this game. It was a slog to score unless your name was Myles Turner, and Haliburton got going late. But Siakam early was the standout scorer of the game, and the Pacers really, really needed that to get across this one. Second quarter specifically, he was tremendous. 6 for 7, 16 points in just the second quarter. That's when the Pacers scored 40 and a quarter. I thought he was very important in this game in that way. The only real breakthrough of the rhythm of the game guy, and the Pacers offense definitely looked like it was popping more. Certainly some of that's just the shots going in, but I thought that was very important on a night where lots of other stuff was a little uglier, let's say, for both teams. Some other standout stuff in this game. Pacers bench is just, man, it's so different than last year, the way they're able to rely on that unit. And I get that there's some mixing and matching and rotational stuff going on, but Jarris Walker made his shots and made some big fourth quarter defensive plays. He had 5 rebounds, but he was with the starters, and that boosted his plus minus to plus 11. The rest of the bench, tough. Obi Toppin, 2 for 5. He had 5 rebounds, which was nice, but minus 10. He had an game. Thomas Bryant was 0 for 4 from the field. He had his 6 rebounds, which was nice. Ben Shepherd barely touched the ball. It felt like he plays fine team defense every time he's out there. Got some run with the starters as well. And then TJ McConnell, I just did a segment on this, so now I can actually say it with my chest a little more with, stats to back it up. 1 for 7, and the one make, he got all the way to the rim and scooped it up under. But that mid-ranger used to just feel so automatic, and he still did good stuff. 5 assists, 5 boards, 1 steal, no turnovers. He did point guardy things. They won McConnell's minutes, but the bench isn't the same when he's not just awesome scorer like he was for so much time last season. And I get that it's unreasonable to expect TJ McConnell to be one of the best isolation scorers in the league for 2 months like he was late last year. But there needs to be a middle ground between that and this. That was happening early in the season. He had found that middle ground, but his last month or so has been pretty tough in terms of finishing plays. And I still believe his shots are going to go in when he takes them. He can create them. Basically, it feels like the same, but if they're not going in, they're not going in. And they've been having to rely on other combos or other ways for those bench groups to score. And that was tough in this game. Another story to me, I talked about Cade's turnovers, but that turnover battle ended up being huge in this game because mostly thanks to Jalen Duren, the Pistons dominated the glass. 3 offensive rebounds total for the Pacers. The Pistons had 14, 55-40 rebounding in this game. I never think rebounding is as important as other people do, but when it's that big of a gap, that can hurt you. And the Pistons end up taking more shots than the Pacers in this game, despite equal free throws. But they only took 2 more shots despite that massive rebounding advantage because of turnovers. 19 for Detroit. And some of them were just pickpockets by the Pacers. They did really well with their hands. Only 9 for the Pacers, 3 of them from Walker and 3 of them from Haliburton. So only 3 total from everybody else. That was important. The possession battle has mattered a lot for the Pacers in this calendar year. Sometimes it's because of how dominant they've been, and sometimes it's because of their ability to overcome it in other ways, unfortunately. And tonight was their ability to overcome it in other ways. They needed to do well in the turnover battle to make up for those rebounds, and they did a great job there to keep up. And I thought their hands on defense were awesome. They were tipping passes. They were just pickpocketing guys on their dribbles. That was really important, I thought, for the Pacers in this game because the Pistons were defending pretty well. So getting out 16 points off turnovers for the Pacers and getting out and running with 25 fast break points. That was barely more, but enough more than Detroit to get it done. I thought that was pretty important as well. And it just felt like they got steals at a lot of crucial moments in this game. The Pistons cut it to, I believe, 6, maybe 4 in this fourth quarter after the Pacers were up as much as 20. Yeah, 6 in the fourth quarter. So it never got quite to clutch time. But, in the game where the Pacers can't hold a big lead, they did hold on to win. They never trailed or anything, but they had some crucial moments where the Pistons actually had the ball down 6, could have made it a 1-possession game or just even closer. And Jarris Walker or Andrew Nembhard or someone would come up with a big steal. I thought that was a very important part of this game and a big win for the Pacers. Like I said, these teams are much closer in the standings than I think people realized entering the game. JB Biggerstaff mentioned it before. The Pistons knew how important this one potentially was. Detroit entered half a game behind the Pacers. Now that is a game and a half. Detroit 21-20, Pacers 23-19. Pacers up 2-1 on that tiebreaker. So pretty big win for the Pacers, who remain in sixth for now in the East, tied for fifth with Orlando, half a game out of fourth. Every win they get is going to be important. And we'll talk about them all here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Thanks for listening and watching this one. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony Tyrese. And this podcast is there at Locked On Pacers. Tomorrow, nothing for Saturday, but Saturday night into Sunday, we'll have a podcast after the Philly game, one of the shorter weekend ones. And then I'll have some fun next week as the Pacers head to Paris. I will try to learn some French for a funny intro and hopefully have lots of guests and talk about interesting things before they play the Spurs twice. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed this show. Back soon, talking more Pacers. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.